Adult stem cells are your body's primary repair entity. There is only one supplement company which claims to be able to increase your blood levels of circulating adult stem cells, and that's Cerule, with their Stem Enhance Ultra product. 2 capsules have been shown to increase adult stem cell levels by over 30% in just 1 hour. There is no other product which dares to make such a claim. Beth and I take Stem Enhance daily and double up anytime we think our body's immune system could use a little boost. Check it out at billstill.cerule.com. If you have any questions about Cerule products, contact Beth at bhstill@gmail.com.
Well, this is quite interesting, isn't it? Check it out.
An anchor who's still on TV today in California sat down with me at a coffee shop during the election.
Well, this is quite interesting, isn't it? Check it out.
An anchor who's still on TV today in California sat down with me at a coffee shop during the election. He said, Kevin, there are times that we look at what we are told to say and we want to scream at the script because we know it's a lie. But we have to do it because otherwise our reporters won't get invited back into the Newsom press briefing. And we have to be there to cover it. Otherwise people will go to a different news station. If we don't get invited in, we don't get the coverage of their grand new plan. So really you don't get exposure to the problems in California through the mainstream television. And I'm not talking about nationwide, CNN, Fox, MSNBC, all of the local stations. I think it's bad, the censorship we saw with the Twitter files or at Meta. The same thing is happening at every single news station throughout the entire state. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg was just talking on Joe Rogan about how as soon as they started saying no to the Biden administration, that they weren't going to remove certain posts, they started getting a bunch of agency inquiries and lawsuits against Meta. Well, imagine getting sued if you're a small local TV or radio station in California by the governor. You're screwed.
Good afternoon. I'm still reporting on that mysterious helicopter plane collision over the Potomac River on January 29th. At about 9 p.m. on January 29th, a UH-60 Black Hawk helicopter, call sign PAT-25, collided with an American Airlines regional jet, call sign AA5342CRJ. which was only seconds from landing at Reagan National Airport just across the river from Washington, D.C. In the helicopter were Captain Rebecca Loback, age 28, of Durham, North Carolina. She was the pilot flying the chopper and was undergoing her annual night flying evaluation, or check ride. She had 450 hours in total and 326 hours on Blackhawks. She had previously served as a White House military social aide during the Biden administration. Her check rider was Chief Warrant Officer 2, Andrew Lloyd Eves, aged 39, of Great Mills, Maryland. He was the primary communicator between the chopper and air traffic controllers. He had 968 flight hours, 300 of which were on the UH-60 Blackhawk. Also on the flight as crew chief and maintenance technician was Staff Sergeant Ryan Austin O'Hara, 29, of Liburn, Georgia. He had 1,149 flight hours, all on the UH-60. My opinion, they could not possibly have been alive and allow that helicopter to fly into a passenger jet. That is my basic assumption after spending 3 days on this story trying to sift it down to its essentials. Here is the most accurate view of the collision.
The American Airlines plane can be seen flying towards the airport before the two collide, causing a mid-air explosion and fall into the river. In a second video, you can see the Army helicopter and American Airlines plane travel toward each other. After the collision and subsequent explosion, the airliner can be seen spinning into the water, and the Black Hawk is also seen falling into the water.
You may notice that the incoming helicopter, the light coming in from the left, looks like it ascends in altitude in the very last second of this video.
In a second video, you can see the Army helicopter and American Airlines plane travel toward each other. After the collision and subsequent explosion, the airliner can be seen spinning into the water, and the Black Hawk is also seen falling into the water.
Here's the latest timeline of the event as put together by reporter Peggy Traeger Tierney of Tierney's Real News. She first published this on her Substack. She has authorized my synopsizing of her 8,700-word original report. January 29, 2025, 6:18 p.m. American Airlines Flight 5342 departs from Wichita Dwight D. Eisenhower National Airport in Kansas, heading towards Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport, known as DCA. 8:39 and 10 seconds p.m. Potomac approach cleared the airplane crew for a visual runway 1 approach. 8:43 and 6 seconds p.m. The airplane crew made initial contact with the DCA tower. The tower controller asked if the crew could switch to runway 33. 8:45 and 27 seconds p.m. The pilot switched off the plane's autopilot. The runway was short. He wanted his hands on the landing. 8:46 p.m. Air traffic controllers instructed Flight 5342 to land on runway 33, and the pilots acknowledged the instruction. 8:46 and 1 second p.m. ATC informed incoming PAT-25, the Black Hawk helicopter, that the traffic just south of the Wilson Bridge and coming north was a CRJ at 1,200 feet and descending for runway 33. 8:46 and 29 seconds p.m. The airplane crew received a 1,000-foot automated call-out just seconds from touchdown. 8:47 p.m. ACT Tower calls the chopper. Pat 25, do you have the CRJ in sight? This query from ATC was to confirm whether the helicopter could see the Bombardier CRJ 700 regional jet, which was on approach to land. Its brilliant landing lights had to be lighting up the cockpit of the chopper as it approached from around 30 degrees off the chopper's left side, easily visible on a clear, dark night. However, there was no response from the chopper. ATC, a little more concerned, air traffic control instructs the chopper on which way to turn to avoid an impending collision. PAT-25 passed behind the CRJ. That would be a turn to the left as the passenger jet flew across their front, clearly in view. Finally, a response, but not a normal radio response, but with a text message. There was no way to discern from whence this text message came, although the MSM quickly announced that it was from someone inside the PA-25 chopper. Text from unidentified source. PAT-25 has aircraft in sight. Request visual separation. Can you imagine someone taking the time to type out a text message in the dark with what would be less than 60 seconds left to live? Ridiculous. But that was the only response purportedly by someone in the chopper. They requested visual separation. In other words, leave us alone, we'll take care of not hitting that airplane. But that's not what happened. Earlier, the Black Hawk pilot, Captain Rebecca Loback, was advised to return to base 3 times, but she did not respond and, more importantly, didn't comply. 1 second after the text message, the airplane crew received an automated traffic advisory stating, "Traffic, traffic." This is an automatic danger warning of an imminent collision. 8:47 and 42 seconds p.m. ATC Tower immediately directed the chopper to turn left to avoid a collision with the jet. Again, no response from PAT-25. 8:47 and 58 seconds p.m. Meanwhile, back in the passenger jet, the crew desperately started to pull up, seeing that the chopper was apparently deliberately ignoring all warnings and was steering directly on a collision course. But it was too late. 8:47 and 59 seconds p.m. Sounds of impact were audible, followed by the end of the recording. Astoundingly, within a few hours, the FBI announced that there was no indication of terrorism in the collision. This was reported by various news outlets and posts on X, with the earliest mention from the FBI's Washington field office to NBC News. January 30th evening, the NTSB investigators announced the recovery of the cockpit voice recorder and flight data recorder from the submerged jet, which was under about 40 feet of the Potomac River. Interestingly, as the media began to investigate, official reports and statements from defense officials indicate that the helicopter took off from Fort Belvoir, Virginia. Posts on X, however, initially claimed the helicopter might have originated from 811 Lawton Street, McLean, Virginia, near CIA headquarters, about 10 miles upriver from the crash site. However, these claims were later refuted by official statements confirming Fort Belvoir was the initial departure point. However, both statements could be true. In other words, it originally took off from Fort Belvoir, went to the CIA headquarters, and then went down the Potomac River. All we know for sure is that PAT-25 was flying south over the Potomac River just east of Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport, DCA. The helicopter was likely following Route 4, which is a designated helicopter flight path in the Washington, D.C. area that runs along the eastern side of the Potomac River to stay clear of airport traffic. They had flown it many times before. However, the strict flight restrictions along Route 4 were not to exceed 200 feet in altitude. Instead, the chopper was ascending when it hit the plane at about 400 feet in altitude and 1/2 mile west of its lane on Route 4. In addition, PAT-25 had 3 times refused to return to base and twice ignored ATC's instructions to turn left. Why? Initially, the media blamed the air traffic controllers because they were understaffed that night. However, once all the evidence was made available, it is obvious that it was not the fault of the controllers or the flight crew aboard the passenger jet. The helicopter was flying at 200 feet, then proceeded to ascend quickly within 37 seconds to the same altitude as the plane at around 400 feet. This accident was 100% the fault of the helicopter crew aboard PAT-25, who seemed to act as though they were on a deliberate suicide mission that night, if any of them were conscious at that point. Many people have assumed that the pilots of the helicopter were having an audio conversation with the ATC or the other plane. No, they were not. There is no proof of life from the helicopter before the crash. The only communications from the Black Hawk helicopter to ATC was the one-line text message only. The origin of that text is unknown at this point. It could have originated from anywhere, perhaps someone who wanted to pretend that he was on the chopper but was not. It totally strains credibility that someone on the chopper decided, oh, we only have 30 seconds to live. I think I'll just send out a quick text. Not. According to Grok, the AI search engine, based on the available information, there are no specific voice recordings identified that capture Rebecca Loback's voice directly communicating with air traffic control. Yet at the same time, the FBI issued a statement which is repeated over and over again by the fake news that this was not intentional foul play or terrorism. How did they know anything at this point? Multiple sources reported that a senior FBI official from the Washington field office stated there was no indication of criminality or terrorism related to the crash. President Trump made his initial statement, but President Trump did not seem so sure. The Black Hawk helicopter was flying too high by a lot. It was far above the 200-foot limit. That's not really too complicated to understand, is it? Hours after the incident, CNN played cell phone camera footage of the actual collision.
In a second video, you can see the Army helicopter and American Airlines plane travel toward each other. After the collision and subsequent explosion, the airliner can be seen spinning into the water, and the Black Hawk is also seen falling into the water.
This video clearly makes it look like the Black Hawk helicopter flew directly into the plane. On February 3rd, ABC and the New York Post reported that 2 airport employees were arrested for leaking that video to CNN. For some reason the D.C. Airport Authority didn't want us to see that video. Why not? The individuals who leaked this video to CNN were Jonathan Savoy, 45, of Upper Marlboro, Maryland, and Mohammed Lamin McGew, 21, from Rockville, Maryland. They were charged with computer trespass on February 2nd. Savoy was released on a summons by a magistrate assigned to the case. It was not immediately known when Savoy was due in court or whether he had obtained an attorney in the case. They were both charged with making an unauthorized copy of Airports Authority records. Peggy Traeger Tierney of Tierney's Real News, the original author of this report, said she had spoken with an airline expert who said, "I was an FAA air traffic controller. I must say I am somewhat baffled by the whole thing. The ATC will typically call out traffic using a clock number for direction and distance and altitude, such as traffic, a CRJ at 2 o'clock, 2 miles at 500 feet descending on final for runway 33. And you have to make sure you get a response from the helicopter to your instructions." Tierney agreed. While listening again to the audio we've been given to prove that the ATC told the helicopter to watch for it and pass behind the plane, it seems very suspect and incomplete. This makes me think the audio has been manipulated for public consumption. The day after Hegseth started as Trump's defense secretary, he confirmed that he was told that the helicopter was part of a continuity of government mission. The crew aboard the UH-60 Black Hawk chopper was responsible for COG, continuity of government, top-secret evacuation missions meant to whisk top U.S. officials from D.C., including the sitting president, to secure locations in the case of a national emergency such as terrorist attack or a nuclear attack. Hegseth said he couldn't say more due to national security. The last known time a continuity of government operations mission was activated was on September 11, 2001, when high-ranking officials were transported to sites including Raven Rock Mountain Complex, or Site R, located near Camp David, and the super-secret underground Congress inside Mount Weather in western Loudoun County, Virginia. However, some version of this exercise has been in effect since at least the late 1960s. But there is no doubt that these practice COG missions do go on and should go on. They are designed to be able to whisk top government and congressional officials into secure underground facilities just 30 minutes away in the mountains of Virginia, Maryland, and Pennsylvania, and this reporter has direct knowledge of these activities going back 50 years or more. Grok also confirmed that this particular COG operation started on January 10th before Trump's inauguration and was supported by 80 soldiers and 10 Black Hawk helicopters that were brought to the Virginia Air Base from Idaho. So it was controlled by Team Biden and following procedures directed by Obama that Obama had written way back in 2009. COG used to be run by FEMA. Now it is directed out of the White House because Obama wanted it that way. Shortly after the collision, the media withheld the female pilot's name for 3 days. Apparently, the holdup was waiting for those who were allegedly on the blacktop to have their social media wiped clean. The two men, the NCOs, are not the type of people who go berserk and decide, "Here's an idea, let's all go out tonight and find an incoming plane at National and do a group suicide." No, these people have been battle-tested over and over again in a special operations setting. If there was any doubt of their mental competence and reliability, they would never be flying over the nation's capital in a $40 million top-tier aircraft. By the way, Grok also confirms that these helicopters can be flown remotely with no pilots on board. No, this capability is not a conspiracy theory. It's a very practical and not very expensive upgrade in today's world of remotely operated drones. The Army has apparently tested this and demonstrated it in a relatively public setting before. So what do we know at this point for sure? NTSB says the investigation will take a year. By then, lots of brainwashing and evidence manipulation can and will happen. There will be little oversight or media interest in this story even 1 month from now. It will die a silent death in the wake of all the dangers that the president will be facing 1 month from today. If I were going to continue to dig into this, my next avenue of investigation would be to examine the passenger list of the jet. Was someone dangerous to the deep state aboard? So, 9 days after President Trump took office, a military helicopter flew right into a commercial airliner in D.C. for no reason. Dozens of people were killed. On January 10th, prior to Trump taking office, the Biden administration, directed by Obama's protocols, brought in dozens of soldiers and helicopters for a continuity of government exercise. At the same time, the Obama-Biden administration had been allowing dozens of mysterious drones to fly over the D.C. area, and one of those may have actually tried to attack President Trump's backup plane. Remember that President Trump also stopped flying for a while and even installed devices on his vehicles to jam GPS signals. So, barring some special operations person blowing the whistle on this operation, that's about as far in depth as you, my friends, will ever dive into this story, unless there is another similar situation sometime down the road. Could it be that there were no living persons aboard the Special Operations Black Hawk helicopter PAT-25 on January 29, 2025, as it approached an American Airlines regional jet? Is it possible that the chopper was being remotely piloted for reasons unknown? I'm still reporting from just outside the citadel of world freedom. Good day.